Hi, welcome to this game review. We'll have a look at this game where first black took the bishop pair, specifically the dark squared bishop, and then, well, he played quite well, but he could have used his dark squared bishop more strongly. But let's take a look. Started as this strange opening, and black was very well prepared. f6, the critical move, trying to take the center and also using this strange position of the bishop. Usually white should probably just move and say that he provoked f6, so to say, but black is doing quite well here. After this, knight h6 is a very good move, which basically traps the bishop. If white wants, he can play it here to run away from the knight. And both sides have their chances here. The play is quite interesting and quite sharp. Black shouldn't be worse. e3, knight f5, and now this bishop is basically trapped. And not only can black just take it, but he was prepared to play h5, after which the threat is h4 to just trap the bishop on the spot. And the problem for white is that he has to remove the h pawn, after which he will have to recapture with the f pawn on g3, which would not only create a weakness on g3 but also weaken the e3 point as well. So this happened, and now what black should understand is that he took the dark squared bishop, so he has the bishop pair, and in general this means that he has to use the bishop that doesn't have an opponent, which means he should generally play on the dark squares, and there are plenty of dark squared weaknesses. So starts with queen d6, which is fine, king f2 to defend, and d5, so putting pawns on dark squares to attack this structure is a good idea. Knight f3, and now black has a pretty simple plan, which starts with e4, and then f5, and then g5, and then f4, which would completely undermine this structure. And this is sort of a reversed French type of thing, but with the king on f2 as well. So and this seems very good for black. White should try to gain counterplay, and black can stop it, but he can also just continue attacking. For example, like this. Notice everything is happening on the dark squares. We're trying to create weaknesses on the dark square complex and also attacking the king. So this is very good for black. This was the first chance to use the dark squares. Okay, black develops the knight, though I don't really like the knight's position on c6. It's only attacking d4. If white defends, he'll be quite fine. Here knight h4 was played, which is kind of beside the point. This move doesn't really have much of an idea, apart from knight g6, but that is very easy to stop with rook h6. And now g5 will just kick the knight away, and g5 is in general a useful move for black. White should probably try to gain counterplay on the other complex of squares, which is the light squares, with c4, knight c3, and if black gets distracted in the center, he will not get enough time to attack the king. Knight h4, rook h6, bishop e2, and now white is getting developed. f5 was played, which is fine, but not very necessary. So of course white will probably take this pawn, but we should be okay with that, since we're getting time for the pawn with playing g6. And for example, g5 is already a good move. This is a little bit complicated, as we will have to keep our king in the center, but the king will eventually probably go to d7 or somewhere else to open up the rook. The lines are a bit complicated. For example, here, bishop g7, we're trying to say that this knight is a bit stuck with bishop f5. The king will eventually move somewhere, the rook will head over, and white's pieces are a bit uncoordinated. But this isn't necessary. We can also play knight e7, because this knight isn't very well placed. That pressure on d4 is not enough. For example, now if takes, then g6, and for example if white goes back, we can even play e4 to trap the knight, or just develop like this. Maybe play c5 to attack the dark squares again, but probably just g5, e4, moves like this. But f5 is okay. Now white takes here, which is a very big mistake, because it opens new dark squared diagonals. And now black would in general like to take with the queen to put the bishop here, but after this we cannot play g6 anymore, so this is a bit uncomfortable. So knight takes, white takes the pawn, g6, he goes back. Now bishop e6. Not sure why the bishop would want to go here exactly, unless to defend d5. I would like to put the bishop here to not block the e file, as I could imagine a rook going there to attack this weakness, which is on a dark square, and thus should be one of our targets as black. But okay, this is fine. c3, a bit slow. White should try to develop his pieces somehow, as this is the problem he is facing. c3 doesn't really do much here. Black castles, knight d2. Now bishop e7. Black is continuing to kind of slowly develop, but it's not that important to put the bishop on e7 now. And also, this isn't too much of a threat, as black probably doesn't want to give up his dark squared bishop for a pawn. But either way, the knight can go back, and the bishop is not really doing much here. Instead, black should probably think more long term where the bishop belongs. Maybe on h6 to attack this big weakness here, but also maybe on g7 to prepare c5, d4 to completely open up the diagonals. Okay, bishop e7, knight goes back, which is fair enough. Knight d4, bishop d7, c4. White is trying to get counterplay. Now knight g5. And this kind of ignores white's ideas of opening the c file. Maybe instead c5 should have been played, as mentioned in the comments. And for example, after this, the most instructive is d4, and finally opening up the dark squared diagonals. And this was the whole point. When we took the bishop on g3, our point was to play on the dark squares, since we have a dark squared bishop and our opponent doesn't. For example, after this, even g5, putting the bishop on f6, playing g4 to weaken the d4 square as well. And black is close to winning, as the dark squared bishop will be extremely powerful here. But after knight g5, black is hinting at knight e4, but I don't think it's that great to exchange these knights, as then we will not be able to attack the e3 square. Also, the pawn on f5 may be used as a battering ram to play g5, f4 instead of this. Now white takes, black takes back, and now white blunders with knight f3. Instead he should just develop his pieces again, rook to c1, and here black doesn't really have many serious threats anymore. Suddenly white is getting some counterplay. His next move may be here, or even bishop c4 to develop. For example, knight e4 doesn't really do much. The f file is kind of useless. White can develop his pieces like this, put the king on h2 maybe even, or e2, and it may be safe enough. The f file is not really worth much, and the rook on h6 is not coordinated with the rest of our play. But after this, black gets the great square on e4, and he can even just take here, so it's not really that that white blundered some kind of move, I don't think, unless it's knight e4, but just any move is winning here. Queen d6 is good enough. Next, white just got checkmated, so but here already it's a bit too late to suggest anything. Queen g3 is the next move, and in this game eventually black didn't even need his dark squared bishop. The queen and the knight did all the work on the dark squares, and finally it's checkmate with bishop takes b5. So black played quite well, though he did let white sort of equalize at the end here by playing knight g5, but it worked out. Probably black should have again tried to use the dark squares instead of the light squares, as he has the dark squared bishop, and c5 d4 is a very instructive idea. White can also move the knight here, I guess, but the same d4 may happen, again loosening white's control over the dark squares. For example, here maybe even f4 or something, opening up all of the dark squares. And this should be the idea that black goes for in one or another form, since he took the bishop on g3.